Hi. Thanks for inviting me, presenting me. What I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to say something about globalization and some changes that occur in the context of globalization and how they affect Jews around the world, not just in Israel, but also in the Jewish diaspora. And I'm going to be making three main points. One, I'm going to show that the structure of citizenship has been changing, and countries have moved to permit dual citizenship, which was traditionally banned by most countries for most of the 20th century. This change, this legal change, is creating new opportunities for different population groups to acquire dual citizenship and use it for practical purposes. Among these groups are many Jews, so this disproportionately benefits Jews, the toleration of dual citizenship. And there is growing interest in dual citizenship, both in Israel and in the Jewish diaspora, as a kind of resource, as an insurance policy, as a mobility enhancer. So first, about the change in the structure of citizenship. So traditionally, countries did not permit their citizens to hold another citizenship. Israel permits dual citizenship and always has, but it's quite an outlier. So in 1990, only 30% of countries in Europe and in the Americas permit dual citizenship. By 2016, 80% of those countries already permit dual citizenship. So basically, it is now possible to be a citizen of a country where so the relationship is not exclusive. I can be a citizen of two countries at the same time. I can also be a citizen of a country where I do not live, right? Because it is possible to be a dual citizen. It is much more difficult to be a dual resident, right? So in effect, most dual citizens are people who live in one country, hold its citizenship, and also hold another citizenship from another country to which they have much weaker ties of identity and practical ties. And within this context, dual citizenship has emerged as a kind of resource. People live in one country, but they want to acquire a second citizenship that can be used for various reasons that do not necessarily require being in the territory of the country and do not necessarily require identifying with the country that's granting the citizenship. So the second citizenship can be used as an insurance policy, as a second passport that gives a higher mobility, as a means of economic access, and this is especially about the EU, right? Countries that are in the EU, their citizenship is automatically EU citizenship. So even though Romania or Poland, for example, or Portugal might be countries that are not very developed economically, that are not very attractive for immigration, their citizenship is extremely attractive because it is EU citizenship that provides access to Germany, Sweden, France, and until this year, the UK, and etc. So, and citizenship is today the status that is most important in determining an individual's life chances. And that is because the main axis of stratification between humans today in the world is on the basis of citizenship. If we locate any two individuals around the world and we try to explain statistically the gaps in income between them, then the most important factor is going to be citizenship. So between country gaps in income inequality are greater than within country gaps or class. And citizenship is relevant not only to incomes, but it also stratifies the world's population in terms of security, political rights, travel freedom rights. So there is a globe. So there are countries that are much safer. Western countries are much safer than non-Western countries. Of course, only half of the world's countries are democratic. The rest are non-democratic. So if you have citizenship from a democratic country, you have a vote. You have a right to determine your government, which is not a given for the other half of the world's citizenships. And of course, travel freedom. There is a huge gap in travel freedom. Citizens of about 60 countries can enter the EU and the US without a visa. And around 120 countries, so most African and Asian countries, they require a visa in order to visit either the EU or the US. So their global mobility is severely curtailed. So within this context, there is high demand for dual citizenship that is mostly along the lines of these value differentials between the citizenships of different countries, right? So if I live outside Western Europe or outside North America, if I live in Israel or in Argentina or in Brazil or in China, then I might be interested in getting a second citizenship, right? This is the value differential. And a second sense in which dual citizenship might become useful is just as a general insurance policy, right? So we expect people who are living outside Western Europe and North America to have high demand for citizenship. That is going to be across the board, but we can also find specific populations within the West that will want to have citizenship as an insurance policy, even though they already have EU citizenship or US citizenship. Okay, so this is about this shift in this legal shift that permits dual citizenship and the kind of new opportunities that it creates. This is like a model that I designed to calculate the citizenship value in different countries. I can present it with more detail if you're interested in the Q&A. Basically, this sums up all four of the aspects that I mentioned. So economic development, security, democracy, and travel freedom, and kind of ranks the world's countries into three blocks. And you can see that the top tier citizenship is Western Europe, North America, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea. Then you have kind of lower tier, these are the countries marked in green, mostly in Asia and Africa, and a kind of global middle tier, where countries have citizenship value that is above the global median, but does not reach the tight cluster of almost complete rights that is offered by Western citizenship. So I categorize Latin American countries, Eastern European countries, Israel, as belonging to this category of citizenship. Okay, so I try to show you that dual citizenship is an opportunity. Now, who may benefit from this kind of opportunity? Naturally, these would usually be people who have ties to more than one country, right? So such ties may be created on the basis of mobility, or they might be created on the basis of ethnicity. And recently, a new pathway has opened up, which is creating ties directly to countries on the basis of monetary investment. So many countries are selling their citizenship. For €1 million, for example, you can buy citizenship in Malta. For 2 million, you can buy citizenship in Cyprus. And these citizenships are attractive not because of the weather in Malta or Cyprus, but because this is EU citizenship. I'm not going to be talking today so much about investment citizenship, because it's not so relevant for Jews. It's mostly relevant for people coming from China or Russia and other countries. So citizenship, dual citizenship may be created on the basis of immigration, present immigration or past immigration, and it may be created on the basis of countries' ethnic preferences that create opportunities for specific ethnic categories. So in general, the three main categories categories globally that may profit from dual citizenship are immigrants and their descendants, ethnic minorities, and economic elites. And in the case of immigrants and in the case of ethnic minorities, dual citizenship sometimes creates a reversal of fortunes. So you have a population that had relatively low status and low position, and suddenly they enjoy high status and high position. For example, ethnic Hungarians in the countries around Hungary, such as Serbia or Slovakia, now have, or Ukraine, have higher status because they can now gain EU citizenship in non-EU countries. Okay, so what are the characteristics of the world's Jewish population? In general, we see that, as Uzi has shown and as Sergio has shown in his papers, the world's Jewish population is concentrated in Israel and the US, with some smaller communities in Western Europe and in South America. Jews are very likely to be immigrants. Full 25% of Jews worldwide are immigrants. Okay? And if we add the second generation, then we get another roughly 20% of Jews are second-generation immigrants. So in Israel, 55% are first or second-generation immigrants. In the US, it's 34% of Jews that are first or second-generation immigrants. So immigration is pretty recent for a large share of the world's Jews. Jews are, of course, are in many countries are considered an ethnic minority, and it's an ethnic minority with a tradition of mobility. Jews are economically successful, and I don't need to say anything more about that. And we can also say that within Jewish families there is a tradition. There are various traditions, various practical dispositions that make Jews particularly likely to identify possibilities for securing insurance policies, for gaining another citizenship, for creating this kind of opportunity, for identifying and seizing on this kind of opportunities. And in one paper I wrote about this, I call this a diasporic habitus. So habitus is the term of the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu to describe a kind of relatively rigid set of ways of seeing the world and acting on the world. So we can say that Jewish families have this tendency to identify these opportunities for gaining second citizenship as a way of gaining insurance, creating a way out, expanding opportunities. Okay. So all of these characteristics make the world's Jews particularly likely to benefit from the shift towards the permission of dual citizenship. And I'm going to show this along two levels, along two kinds of citizenship. One is ancestry-based, and the second is ethnic preference. And I'm going to show that it's not limited to Israel. It's also something that characterizes the Jewish diaspora. So first of all, ancestry-based citizenship. So this is citizenship that you get on the basis of actual descent from immigrants. And this is usually something that people get from European Union countries that have relatively generous laws that give ancestry-based citizenship. We have over 85,000 Israelis that have acquired EU citizenship on the basis of ancestry since the year 2000, and there is now growing demand in the diaspora. So these are statistics just for German citizenship. So these are people whose grandparents or parents have left Nazi Germany, they've had their citizenship revoked, and now they are eligible to just reapply and get it. So you see here the blue graph is Israel, and the red graph is the descendants of German Jews from the US, UK, Argentina, and Brazil, so the following countries. And you can see that starting in 2000, Israel has a very big peak around 2004, 5, 6. Then it starts going down. In 2017, you see that demand from the diaspora actually exceeds demand for German citizenship in Israel for the first time. And now let's see what happens. So in general, you see the demand in Israel has peaked in the middle of the past decade. This was around the time that Israelis were getting Polish passports, Romanian passports, Hungarian passports, so the German passport was also popular. And then it's going down. And Jews in the diaspora are actually becoming more interested in German citizenship. Let's look at it closely. This is without Israel, so it's a different scale. These are just these 4 countries that I mentioned. And you can see in this graph very clearly how German citizenship acts as a way to handle risk, right? So the blue graph is Argentina, 2002, 2003. This is right after the economic crisis in Argentina. Argentina, people are getting passports, and then demand goes back down. US, this is the red graph, around 2007, 8. This is the economic crisis, and you see the demand has been going up there and staying pretty high, fluctuating, but staying pretty high. Brazil, I don't have anything special to say, but the UK is quite remarkable, right? So there aren't that many German origin Jews in the UK. These are some people from the Kindertransport and a few others. And there's been practically zero acquisition of German citizenship since 2000 until the Brexit vote. And then we see a huge leap in demand for German citizenship in the UK. Okay, so that's about ancestry-based citizenship. Now about ethnic preference. Do I have, how much time do I have? 5 minutes, okay. So about ethnic preference. So there are actually two settings of ethnic preferences that allow Jews to gain dual citizenship. The first one is, of course, Israel. So Israel has the law of return since 1950. It actually predates Israel's citizenship law, and it says that any Jew who arrives in the country automatically becomes Israeli and becomes a citizen. And since 1948, over 3.2 million Jews immigrated to Israel based on the law of return. Now, what's interesting is that in recent years, a growing percentage of immigrants are coming from developed Western countries, so mostly the US and France, so about 25 to 30%. So these are people that we can say that part of the reason that makes it, part of the conditions that make it possible for them to immigrate to Israel is the knowledge that they may retain their American or French citizenship. Now, we can guess that a large percentage of the Olim, the immigrants who come to Israel in recent years, hold dual citizenship, because Israel grants automatic citizenship, does not require renunciation of the former citizenship. And of the four leading countries that send immigrants to Israel, so Russia, Ukraine, France, and the US, only the Ukraine bans dual citizenship. So there is grounds to believe that the majority of new Olim in Israel have dual citizenship. Now, many people, they also come to Israel, take the Israeli citizenship, and return to their countries of origin. Because every year, we know that I didn't actually make the calculations for that. I will do it in a later stage of the research. But a big share of the emigrants from Israel are actually pretty recent Olim, right? So many people, they might come. I've heard stories about people from Russia doing this, for example. They come, they take the citizenship, and they go back. So this is Israeli dual citizenship that is secured by Jews, for example, from Russia, as a kind of insurance policy. Potentially, every single Jew in the world has the ability to do this, right? They can all come here and take the Israeli citizenship and leave the next day. So this is we know about this. But since 2015, there is a new kind of ethnic preference for Jews. It doesn't target all of the world's Jews. It only targets Sephardic Jews. Okay, so Spain and Portugal offer dual citizenship to Sephardic Jews. I call this ethnic preference because it is not based on actual descent from Spanish or Portuguese subjects, but it's based on proof of belonging to the Sephardic community. You have to show that you are from the right countries, from the right traditions. You have to sometimes bring a ketubah that says that it's according to the Sephardic nosach, and this is the way of proving, so it's ethnic. There's been over 10,000 citizenships approved. And the main origin countries, this is very interesting, are not, Israel is just one of the leading origin countries. It's not the only one. So the main origin countries are Turkey, Venezuela, Israel, Brazil, Argentina, Morocco. This is a map that shows the leading countries in applications for Spanish citizenship. The biggest origin country is actually Turkey, and then Venezuela. And Israel comes in only third. You can see that also Morocco has a lot of applicants. Portuguese citizenship, the two leading countries are Turkey and Israel, and then you have Brazil, Morocco, Argentina, the UK, and the US. So this is definitely not something that is exclusive to Israel. So to conclude, we see this rise of dual citizenship, and we see that the world's Jews, including Israeli Jews, disproportionately benefit from it because they are because of their migration history and because of the specific ethnic preferential clauses that not only Israel, but now also Spain and Portugal have. It's actually very interesting to think about this when we think that about the first half of the 20th century were Jews who were the paradigmatic group of refugees, stateless, if not, so during the Holocaust, practically completely stateless in the years leading up to the Holocaust, being practically stateless in countries like the Soviet Union or interwar Poland that were trying to get rid of them. Not to get rid of them, but let's say a very, very minimal amount of rights. and we are now in a situation where a lot of the world's Jews have dual citizenship. As elsewhere, the rise of dual citizenship and its strategic acquisition goes hand in hand with a non-national understanding of citizenship. So this is understood less as something that my citizenship, my passport, is seen less as something that reflects my inner identity and my belonging and my duties, and more as an instrument, as something that can open doors for me, that can open up new opportunities, that can help me go across borders. And finally, this finding of this strong association between Jews and dual citizenship should lead us to rethink our concepts of immigration. And especially in Israel, we are very interested in immigration in the sense of Aliyah and Yeridah, so Jews coming to Israel, leaving Israel, right? What do these things mean in times of circular migration, very flexible mobility, and very flexible belonging to several countries at the same time? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
These are two cartoons from Haaretz. This one this one shows Haaretz is the only, by the way, newspaper in Israel that's consistently against dual citizenship. All of the other ones, they are pro. So this one shows people lining up for the Polish passport and says they were always anti-Semitic, these Poles. And this one shows Israelis applied for Spanish citizenship, and all they know about Spain is, Barcelona. And yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Yossi. Any questions, comments? Any new participants here?
Could you talk a little bit about obstacles? Because, from the personal, I know that dual citizenship, Israeli-U.S. with tax laws is actually a very heavy penalty on being it. And so I don't know if that's the case anywhere else, but it certainly is an obstacle to the benefit.
Yeah. So yeah, spot on. The U.S. is actually the only country in the world right now that taxes on the basis of citizenship and not the basis of residence. So U.S. dual citizens of all nationalities and ethnicities are in a kind of, if they live abroad, are in a kind of tricky situation. We have seen the number since FATCA 2010. This is a kind of a new law that imposes much stricter requirements for reporting your income abroad. We have seen growing numbers of people give up their U.S. citizenship if they are living abroad. This is a general thing. It doesn't target directly the Jewish populations, but in general, we have seen that the U.S. citizenship is becoming less attractive as the tax requirements become heavier and stricter.
Thanks, Yossi. It was very interesting. How do you explain the reduction in interest in attaining German citizenship over the last years? What happened?
In Israel?
In Israel, yes.
Yeah, it's very hard to know, but I would imagine that at some point you have a depletion. You just run out of people who may apply. So everybody who could apply already applied. In 2015, I think the German embassy estimated that 120,000 people already have German citizenship in Israel. Now, originally, the number of German Jewish immigrants who arrived in Israel is about 100,000 people. And they did not have 7 children per family, right? This is pretty much around the replacement rate, maybe slightly higher. So we can assume that pretty much anyone who can get the German passport already got it. Yeah.
I think that in your expose, you are missing 2 important considerations about the advantages and disadvantages of having dual citizenship, and I want to contribute to your list of things.
Tell me.
One of the clear disadvantages of dual citizenship is that if you want to access the public sphere of activity in a given country, the country might not accept that you exert this authority if you have dual citizenship. I don't know what the situation is in Israel, but maybe Israel is a very liberal country. I'm not sure if you can be a member of the government or of the Knesset if you have dual citizenship. But I am sure that in many countries it is not possible.
Yeah.
And there are countries, even inside Europe, that whereas there is the fourth freedom of movement of European citizens to access neighboring labor markets, when it comes to public function, this is forbidden. So you cannot be a préfet in France if you are not a French citizen,
Yeah.
even if you have two passports of Poland and Romania.
Right.
And also, you might be obliged to renounce. So that's one thing I wanted to indicate about obstacles. And an advantage that you didn't mention of dual citizenship, as I see it, is that there are segmented labor markets which give you access to employment according to national quotas. What I am referring concretely is that the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, all these organizations have, in many cases, jobs which are assigned to particular citizenships. And if you open The Economist and you see announced at the end, from time to time, international organizations are asking citizens for given countries for very, very lucrative positions.
Yeah.
So that's an interest of having a dual citizenship as well that you didn't mention.
Yeah, yeah. So thanks. Great comments. I agree with both regarding these restrictions. Yeah, in Israel you cannot hold public function if you have a foreign citizenship, and the same also in the U.S. I think here definitely this is a restriction. I think in the case, and this connects to the Jewish context, in the case of ethnic minorities that might be less predisposed to be, so let's say the Jews in Turkey or in Morocco or in Venezuela are already less likely to participate in those countries' politics, being an ethnic minority there. So we can see that this would not necessarily be a disadvantage. For Jews in countries where they are better integrated, definitely this would be a limitation, and this is why I don't expect American Jews, for example, to go for, even if they could, I wouldn't expect them to go for citizenship, for dual citizenship en masse, because this would directly reduce their political and civic status within the U.S., because the U.S. has a lot of limitations on dual citizens. You cannot basically do anything that has to do with the state. Yeah. You can vote, but you cannot serve in public. You cannot work for the state. You cannot work for the Secretary of State and so on. You cannot go join the military. I'm not sure about the military. There's a lot of restrictions. About the second point, so that's within the broader world of economic opportunities, and absolutely that's an advantage. You can also apply for a U.S. green card using another country's quota. There are many advantages of this kind.
I want to talk about the problem of taxes, because the trend is that more countries will adopt the U.S. behavior with taxes. So right now there are 100,000 Israelis that took German citizenship, but I think that in the next decade or so, both French and German and the German government will require their citizens to report of their worldwide income. I mean, already now we see immigration to Israel. Much of the French immigration to Israel is what we call financial migration. And it's quite possible that the French law and the German law will say, okay, you don't have to pay taxes if you're a dual citizen in Israel or in some other country, but you have to report of all your assets. And what the very wealthy are doing, they're trying to pay taxes nowhere. For each country, in each country, they say we're not resident. But the Americans are putting a stop to that. And just a quick, I don't know how many of you know that Boris Johnson is a dual citizen. So when he sold his house in London, the IRS asked for, what about our taxes? He said, leave me alone. I live in Britain. I'm a British guy. He paid.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So in the next few years, there are going to be many people who are going to renounce their U.S. citizenship.
The U.S. citizenship already people are renouncing. About other countries adopting a similar regime, I don't know. I'd be happy to hear about this later if you know about any indications of this. I haven't. I know that also Eritrea taxes their immigrants. But other than Eritrea, I haven't heard of any other country that is following. Switzerland has something that's a little similar, but they don't actually tax. So I don't know. It will be interesting to see about this situation. About money floating around, absolutely. Actually, part of the Aliyah to Israel after 2008 has to do. Well, in 2008, the Israeli government made it kind of like made a policy that if you immigrate to Israel, you do not have to report your assets for 10 years. So you have a 10-year exemption for reporting your all of your global assets, not just what you bring with you to Israel. And this attracted a lot of people. Of course, then the Americans tightened the screws, and it became impractical. And definitely, as you say, part of the French immigration, it's not just the immigration, it's also buying real estate. This has to do with the French estate law, which is very high, and people feel that this is kind of double taxation. And it's actually permissible to, I think they can, something like 100,000 euros every 5 or 10 years that they can transfer abroad. So they just transfer this money here and buy apartments here, and here there is no estate tax. So this is another way to protect and conserve the family money.
Okay, thank you very much.